Hello, everyone. I'm here with Grace Chung. Um, Met her a couple years ago, I believe, and you know, a person that has definitely piqued my curiosity when I first met her, asking what her interests were, and she blew my mind away with atypical responses, at least from what I'm used to. Everything from saying horses, falconry, um, and I that just like a light bulb went off. I was like, whoa, I want to know how this person processes the world. And I think there's things that I don't know things that I say that shock her, but there are things that she says that just amazes me, and I just become more and more curious. And I'm pretty sure the rest of the world wants to know like what is going on in her world and how she came to have that perspective and having this much experience. So I invited her on. And so, the icebreaker that I have for each of these episodes is wearing your favorite shirt or sweatshirt. So what do you have on, Grace?
Oh, yeah, this is a Compton Cowboys sweatshirt, and I bought it to support their organization.
Mm,
They help kids in urban environments, most of them from low-income families, learn to ride horses. And the equestrian world is super monolithic,
mm,
it's very white,
yeah,
very obviously a lot of wealthy people do it,
yeah.
and people of color and people from low-income communities don't have opportunities to be around horses, even if, it's their dream.
Mm.
So I really support organizations that are for this cause. It's just something I care about.
That's epic. And that's another thing I didn't know about you. So, um, you have I don't want to say a lot of passions, but you have a number of passions, which I think um I don't even want to say commendable. It's wonderful because as I meet a lot of people don't know what they like. Um so first and foremost, what are you passionate about? You're not limited to a number, and how'd you get there?
Well, when I was little, I was always obsessed with animals, and I still am. It's just what I've naturally been drawn to. Like growing up, I would beg my parents for basically anything furry or scaly or whatever. I don't discriminate. I love insects and snakes and frogs and all the furry things too. But in college, I'm
Mm,
studying human bio with a concentration in ecology.
mm,
I'm interested in how like human health and the environment intersect, especially
yeah.
with climate change. That's just such a big topic, and it will continue to be more important as time progresses. So I feel like that's everything I do in my life. It has some relationship to that.
Wow. Wow. So you're at Stanford right now.
Mhm.
What did you do in high school or even before high school, outside of school that you think prepared you to get there?
Um, I think I honestly was constantly fighting with my parents about what I should do and shouldn't do. Like they wanted me to play the violin and do golf and um all these great activities, but honestly, I wasn't interested in doing them.
Hmm.
Um, and I fought with them for a really long time until I could forge my own path
Yeah.
and prove to them that I can do other things and I can be capable in other aspects too. So my grandma, she was very nice and bought me a camera that I was begging for. And my mom didn't understand why, but
Mm,
eighth grade, I got my first DSLR and I just started taking photos. I entered some competitions and I won like the National Geographic Youth Photography Competition, like out of the blue. It was super crazy, but I wish it wasn't like this. But from then on, that was the only moment like that my mom was like, oh, maybe she can actually do something with
mm,
this.
yeah.
Um, so then I started traveling the world and finding all different kinds of wildlife to photograph. So I did a lot of photojournalism in high school, especially around conservation topics,
Mm,
particularly in North America and Central America. And I also started doing falconry, so that was just another outlet for me to like connect with nature.
Yeah.
And all these experiences exposed me to different communities, different types of people. For example, the wolf watching community in Yellowstone.
Mm.
I They're a group of people that I normally wouldn't hang out with. Mostly older, retired like white folk
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in Wyoming, but these people were so welcoming. They let me use their scopes and they're awesome. Like they know each individual wolf by name, their history, their lineage, and that exposed me to a whole different world. And then in the falconry community, people are so welcoming. I learned how to trap my own bird, train them, get them
Mm.
to fly to me, and then hunt with me cooperatively. But it's really the people that make or
Mm.
break the experience.
Yeah.
And just exposing me to like a ton of different people really prepared me for college.
Um, Sounds like you've had a lot of wonderful moments. Good or not so good. What would you say is a turning point, a big pivotal moment in your life that shape or that is still shaping who you are right now?
I think a big pivotal moment of my life was a few years ago. My sister attempted to overdose on her medication
Mm.
and she had a seizure
Mm.
in front of me. And they always say when someone has a seizure, you have to stay calm. Well, I did not stay calm and I panicked and I was screaming. I couldn't even call 911 because I just didn't know what to
Yeah.
do. I didn't expect it. Um, and I still blame myself because my sister and my mom had a fight, and she had told me that she took a lot of medication. She didn't specify how much or what type,
Yeah.
but they had been fighting so often. I was just like, this is one of those moments. Um, this has happened before, like we'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't do anything about it. And my dad also didn't do anything about it, even though he knew this was happening.
Mm.
So it's something that I still blame myself
Mm.
for a lot. It's like, why didn't,
Yeah.
I do anything, take her to the hospital, just take action in any way. Um, and now she's okay, but
Yeah.
that was definitely like a pivotal moment. I still think about it every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, in regards to when you encounter something you don't know, and this can be in academics or just how you talk about something that happened to you personally too. Um, I don't even want to talk about like solving problems, but when you encounter something that you don't know, how do you determine the right thing to do? And especially going forward after what you just shared.
So how do I know what the right thing is?
Yeah.
I wish I had like a cooler answer, but I
Yeah.
just live and learn. I make a lot of mistakes and
Mm.
some of them really bite me in the ass.
Yeah.
And I just hope I don't do it
Yeah.
again, really.
Yeah. 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 Um, I mean, I remember I was listening to this coach mentoring this young lady. It's only 9 years old. Um, and she just begged for him to coach uh, her in how to run. And she entered her first race and she got out of 8 people, she got eighth place, right? And I forgot what it was, but she ran it in 18 seconds, right? Dead last. So, math people, track people, you could tell me what the actual portion of track that is. Um, but she felt like she failed. But he was smiling. And she was like, "Why are you smiling?" He's like, "I'm proud of you." It's like, "Proud of you for what?" It's like, "I came in last." He's like, "When I first mentored you, you clocked in 20 seconds, right? You clocked in 18. My expectation was 19, right?" And then going forward, um, she knew running the race, it wasn't to become first place, right? Because you don't know what those other runners have gone through, how long they've trained. But from that point on, she knows her next benchmark is just to incrementally just to be a little bit better, you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of the experiences too, when we experience them, they're just going to be one-offs. Um, but we're trying every day. We're trying
Right.
every day, right? Um, for your field, um, for your major of study or your interests, because you just have a whole awesome spectrum. Um, what does it look like in the future? What do you think it looks like? From conservation to photojournalism, falconry. I want you to cover everything because you cover everything.
Okay. Um, well, first of all, I hope to be a doctor. I don't know
Uh,
what kind, but
yeah.
I want something that intersects my interests of medicine and climate change, which
Um,
is why I am in the organization I'm in called Asclepius Snakebite Foundation. Um, I really, really love herpetology, which is the science of reptiles and amphibians. It's a very overlooked aspect of science, not a lot of funding. Um, the snakes and the frogs, they're not charismatic megafauna. They're not like giraffes and polar bears, these big animals that get a
mm,
lot of conservation interest, the
attention.
ones
Yeah.
that people think of when someone says wildlife. But they're really important. And like amphibians, for example, there's like an amphibian apocalypse. Um, frogs are frogs, salamanders, and newts. They're really sensitive to the environment. And if there's changes in the environment, they're usually the first to go because they're so sensitive. They breathe through their skin, they absorb water through their skin. If there's chemicals in the water, they're going to be the first to go. So that's actually happening right now. But I don't see it being talked about hardly because I mean no
Yeah.
one knows, no one cares.
Yeah.
But it's important because it's a sign that things are changing.
Yeah.
Right now, the whole class of amphibians could be gone. That's like every mammal dying, that's like every bird dying. So it's really serious. And I just want to know more about these animals,
Mm,
especially things like venomous snakes. That's part of why I want to go to Guinea. I want to see these beautiful animals firsthand. I
yeah.
think it's awesome to see something in real life that has like their venom has the potency to kill like hundreds of people.
Yeah.
Like if they bite you, you could die within hours.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people are terrified by that, but I
Yeah.
think that's awesome because nature
Mm,
has created them
yeah. Yeah.
the way God has created them in that way to survive.
Mhm.
Um, so snakebite is super interesting to me. It combines like wildlife conflict with medicine, and a
Mm,
lot of
yeah. Yeah.
it is not just medicine but also education so that people and wildlife can learn to live in harmony. So going forward, I definitely want to incorporate that into my work somehow and continue being in the nonprofit even as a doctor. And I just want to continue learning, really. I think that's my main goal, even if things seem really um unimportant. I remember reading a story about this female scientist, and she was studying a type of fungi called chytrid,
Mm,
and it's just people were like, "Why are you studying this? It has no real world application. It's like a random fungus. No one cares." But that fungus ended up being one of the main reasons that amphibians are in decline. So her research has become useful in that way, and obviously no one expected that. So I think there's just a value in learning things even if you don't know why, like why it's important. I just the world is so interesting and there's so much to learn. So if I stop learning, like, you know, I I think that would mean that I don't know, that's just not me.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
So whatever I do, I want to keep learning and growing as a person, and just continue to be like fascinated by the world around me because that's what makes life fun.
You have a wonderful mind. I think the same way as because there's just like when you're talking about like the venomous sakes, there's a reason behind that. Um, and there's plenty of questions, and I believe the answers are there, but we have to continue seeking out those questions, asking them, or be patient, right? And be considerate. Um, now, where you're at right now, I'm hate to use cliches. There pretty much wasn't smooth sailing. You've already shared. So how do you deal with setbacks? I don't want to use the word failures. or loss. But whenever you hit a stumbling block, how do you deal with it? How do you turn it into a stepping stone?
For me, it really just takes time, and a lot of times I feel like the conflicts I have with life are like interpersonal conflicts, especially with my family. My dad also struggles with sobriety and mental health problems, things like that. And I feel like I'm still figuring that out. I have a rocky relationship with him. I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
But I try to approach things with kindness and warmth, and I think about what God would want me to do in these situations. Um, and even when they honestly make my life really hard sometimes, um, I remind myself that I love them.
Mm.
In the end, I do want the best for them. Um, and for me personally, I have to keep reminding myself that, even when things get hard, there are bigger things
Mm.
waiting for me.
Yeah.
Things will get
Mm.
better. Um, there's bad days, but that's temporary.
Mm.
But I think I'm still figuring that out.
Um, in regards to, you know, um, well, you're here. You've made it really far, and I always say, give yourself a pat on the back, look backwards and see everything that you've overcome and the heavens have brought you through. And, you know, um, no family dynamic is perfect, but your parents,
Wait, I'm
I'm,
so sorry. I cannot hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Um, everything that you've come through, um, heaven has pulled you through, right? And in regards to your parents, everything that you're curious about, I don't think anyone can do it but you, if that makes sense. Especially like your love for reptiles. Hey, I'm all good for reptiles. But when you mentioned venomous snakes the other night, I was like, you saw my face, right? She was like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, God bless your heart, Grace. Because you're the one to do it. You're called. So yeah, don't forget um the container that you've been given. It's so wonderful. Because no one can contain what you've contained but you. Um Now, if someone um, is curious about any of the things um, that you succeeded in, be it photography, going into the medical field, or love of reptiles, what advice would you give them to in regards to starting out, especially in um, Silicon Valley, um, or maybe having a background where parents filial piety, saying, there's only certain rails where you're supposed to go. Um, what advice would you have for them?
I think it's really hard to go against the grain,
Mm,
especially when your family's telling you no.
yeah.
Um, so to whoever is dealing with that situation, like I understand, and it's not easy. And even right now, I feel like sometimes I struggle to break free of that. My parents have expectations and I want to make them happy. Um, but at the end of the day, like it's my life, not
Mm,
theirs.
yeah.
And I think people can only do amazing things if they truly care about it, if they love it, and if they're passionate about it. And we only have this life.
Mm,
So I'd rather do something I love and I want to be good at, um, than go my whole life just trying to fulfill their expectations and be horrible at it. I'm a very stubborn person and I'm very bad at things that I don't care about. No matter how
yeah.
much I try, I just can't force myself to do it. And
Yeah.
maybe that's not the best thing. But I don't think I would be able to live if I, just followed their rules and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
did everything they expected of me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times my mom says I'm a horrible child for that, but you know what? Like, this is my life. This is the
Yeah.
only life I
Yeah.
have. I have to do what I
Yeah.
want to do.
Yeah.
And I think the number one advice I have for people who want to, explore a new interest
Yeah.
is to just meet people from that field. And
Yeah.
in Silicon Valley, like, there will be someone who has that interest. Like, there are amazing people here, no matter how niche or weird it seems.
Yeah.
Like, trust me, there will be someone here who does the thing that you want to do. And, reading about it and stuff, like finding resources online is
Yeah.
great, but like seeing someone who is really passionate
Mm,
about what you like and has gotten really good at their craft is like one of the most inspiring things ever. So I feel like those people really help me push myself forward,
mm.
even when times get tough, and um they're out there. So like look for them.
How did you get linked up with the folks in Wyoming and the wolves, like that community?
Yeah, like I said, it's just literally putting yourself out there, going there, meeting them. For them, I don't know if there's an online community, there probably is, but it was just a matter of stepping out of my car, being like, hello, talking to them, and they're so friendly and so nice. And they're like, look through my scope, and they're these expensive Swarovski scopes, binoculars, and they share them with everyone because they love wolves and they want to share that passion with other people. And that warmth and openness and kindness is just really inspiring. Um, so yeah, it just is a matter of going out and meeting those people. Don't be afraid,
Mm.
um, because someone out there will welcome you with open arms.
I, I love that so much because it's just like one is I think if it's Silicon Valley or nowadays, not just Silicon Valley, but just um when we have relationships, we try to think what we're gonna get out of it, right?
Right,
But when you are so sincere and you're just like, I just love being here, and people sense that, they're like, come on in. Doesn't matter race, sex, doesn't matter religion. They're like, yo, just this is us, right?
right.
And then touching back on your other part about um, you know, being stubborn and being bad at something, or because you're not interested. I don't think it's intentional self-sabotage. They're just things like same thing for me. I'm not good. I won't. I'm telling you, you tell me to do it, I can't do it.
Right.
you know, um, like I love the artsy stuff, mechanical stuff. I dread. I can see and I know how it functions, but if you tell me change the tire, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can do it, but please, please.
Oh, me too.
um, how are you balancing your personal life with your academics? What do you do to have fun
Yeah.
besides study? Because I'm the same way though. This is bad.
Um, Honestly, it intersects a lot. I think
Yeah.
being at Stanford,
Hmm.
most people there do like learning in some capacity, and a lot of people, find academics fun. They're nerds. So I do find some academics fun.
Yeah.
But like I said, just finding my community.
Mm.
My junior year, I joined the equestrian team, and that's something I didn't do my freshman year because I had never competed before and I was so scared and I was worried that
Oh,
the, the idea of competition would ruin something that I loved.
yeah.
Because my love for horses is so pure
Yeah.
and I don't want the desire to win to, overcome that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for the first time in my life, I found people of color who rode horses, and that's like such a crazy statement. But growing up, I only had white peers ride
Yeah.
horses. I was often,
Mm.
the least wealthy out of everybody.
Mm.
The only Asian. A lot of times I still get weird looks and microaggressions,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I ride Western and it's like the style of riding that cowboys and ranchers and it's very popular in like the Bible Belt area. It's like a rodeo sport. So there's like no Asians at all who do this. There's no black people. There's
Wow.
no Middle Eastern people there's like it's just white. But for the first time in my life, I found other Asian people, like, Latino people, like just people of color who rode horses, and it's so crazy. We all have very similar experiences in the community,
Mm,
because it's so monolithic.
yeah,
If you, I'm so sorry.
you're good.
Like, if you're not a white person, you will stand out like a sore thumb,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and you
yeah.
will get a comment, and people will be horrible to you.
Mm.
Um, but we really bonded through that trauma
Yeah, yeah.
at Stanford, and even the team, I guess I kind of idolized them, but even the team isn't all that I thought it would be.
Hmm.
It is still mostly white,
Yeah, yeah.
wealthy, um, not the most welcoming
Hmm.
community,
Yeah,
but I found my own little
yeah,
subset
yeah.
uh, group there, and they've made the experience so much better, and I feel much less alone, being someone in a sport that isn't very welcoming, um, to anyone who's not rich and white.
No.
Um, so I think that really improved my um, social life at school,
Hmm.
and that's how I relieve stress,
Yeah,
in the midst of academics. I go
yeah.
to the barn, it's beautiful. I even love the smell of horses. I think it's very therapeutic. I'm around big animals that I love and people that I love.
Mm.
So I'm really glad I put myself out there and joined something, even though I was initially really scared too.
Yeah. Belonging is really important. And I think I said that's awesome in the fact that you've met that subset that you're talking about, because just imagining each one individually, you have to have a lot of faith to continue doing it. And just imagine if they never showed up at
Right.
that level. Um, Books. What's a book that has significantly influenced you?
Mm, I think one book is What a Fish Knows by Jonathan Balcombe. It's a nonfiction, like science book, which
Mm,
is what I mostly used to read and still read.
yeah.
It's by an ethologist, which is a scientist who studies animal behavior. And he just compiles a bunch of studies and makes them very accessible and explains really basic things like the idea that fish feel pain,
Mm,
which it's so obvious, like it's an animal, of course it feels pain, but it's not really something people think about. Um, and I think, and he talks about how fish think, interesting behavior and why they're similar to other animals that we love, like dogs and cats. Like just because they live
wow.
underwater and they can't scream or make noise when they're in pain doesn't mean
Wow.
that they don't experience pain. And like it's such a simple concept, but it's something that we don't think about. And we treat fish much different than we treat other animals. We kill them by suffocating them when we stuff fish hooks in their mouth and
Wow.
release them. And we say, oh my God, we're doing such a good thing. We're releasing them without realizing that we would never stick a fish hook through a dog's mouth, you
Mm,
know, because they would scream in pain.
yeah,
A
yeah,
fish can't
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Um, so I think that just opened up a world of just realizing I don't know much about animals as I
Mm,
thought I did, and just challenging the preconceived notions society has of different animals. And the book is so awesome. He makes these studies super accessible. I read the book before I learned how to like properly read a research paper, which is a skill, and it's actually harder than it sounds. A lot of people don't know how to dissect a research paper and really understand the study. But this author just really made it easy for us to understand and, took out the key points of all these like important research
mm,
papers. And he's just making the argument that we don't need to stop eating fish. We just need to think about how we treat them in comparison to
Yeah.
other, species.
Yo, sorry. That that was so insightful. It was mind blowing because just like you're right in terms of how we treat other animals, even if it's catch and release, and the fact that um, it's so simple and profound when you brought it. Like when we bring them up, you're suffocating them,
Yeah.
and when we
Like,
trap
of
other animals,
course.
we're not like putting them underwater. Like hold on.
Right. Yeah. And I did falconry, I did hunting.
Yeah.
And when a bird grabs a prey item, catch and release is not something I would ever think about because
Mm.
the animal is injured. The best thing to do is put it out of its misery as soon as
Ah,
possible. So the idea of catch and release is just a crazy thing to me. Like, I don't think it's that people should stop fishing. It's just that people pat themselves on the back for catching and releasing, but it's the same thing as my bird grabbing, another bird and pitching it with its talons and mortally injuring it. And then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna release you now, and I've done a good thing. Like, it's just not.
yeah. The audacity, right?
Yeah.
Um, with all the stepping stones that you stepped upon, all your success, and I think you're going to continue to be successful. Um, how do you know when to be proud of yourself? How do you know when you've reached success? How do you know enough is enough on a project or whatever it is? When do you tell yourself good job? Do you tell yourself good job? That's what I'm curious about too.
I think growing up, I depended more on other people's praises to know
Mm,
whether I did a good job, especially my parents and peers, teachers. Um, which is why I did so much of like entering competitions
yeah,
and stuff. Like, why do you enter a competition? It's to hear that you did a good job or not, like at its essence. Um, I think there's nothing wrong with competing. I still want to do it. But I used to compete so much in photography in high school, and I would be so upset at myself if I didn't win something.
mm,
But in college, I actually stopped competing at all. I still do photography, but I just I realized the intrinsic value of what I'm doing
mm,
and why I love it. And this summer, I actually went to Costa Rica and rediscovered that passion I had for wildlife photography in high school. I went specifically to find poisonous frogs and venomous snakes, and I found both of them. And it was so awesome seeing these animals I only saw like on my computer in real life. They're
that's
just
cool.
there.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, and they're so beautiful. It was like finding a gem, I feel like.
Mm,
Um, and I haven't entered those photos in anything, but I'm still proud of them because I hiked so much to find these, tiny frogs. They're like this big. Um, and I'm just proud of myself for even seeing them. Like, even if I didn't get a good photo, like this is something I wanted to do all my life.
yeah,
And I saw them with my own eyes, and I'm happy just with that. So my perception of success has definitely changed
yeah,
over the years. And at this point, I know that I've done something good if I'm happy with it and
yeah,
happy with the person I was when I, did that thing. Um, so I think I still have a lot of flaws and things to work on, but I guess that's the one thing that I've improved about myself over the years.
yeah,
Just not seeking other people's approval as
yeah,
much.
yeah. It's really, it's weird being in the area that we're at, because success is expected, you know, and we're so high achieving in the Bay Area. We don't realize. So I lived in different places, obviously in Korea and obviously in the United States, and everywhere I live, actually there aren't a lot of successful people. If that makes sense, there aren't a lot of people that are like we're so concentrated here in being high achieving. This is not normal, you know. Um, and so when I talk to my students, talk to my players that I coach in soccer, um, I try to bring them back to a base level of why we're doing this to begin with, right? Because we're not grateful, we're not happy when we feel entitled to something. And then um and I told them, I'm telling them, I'm trying to share because it's my perspective too. That's why I try to be as grateful as possible. Is um and this is not to gaslight them, but just being able to be on the journey is a dream in itself. Because there are other people like you going up and you're like, bro, I'm hiking to do this. Like,
Yeah.
um, um, when I'm sharing with our soccer players and like we're crying after a loss, I'm like, you've made the team. There are other people that actually got cut and they didn't even get to enter into this moment and to enter into this space. So, I love that you've come to that point of gratefulness. um,
Yeah.
and that's your memory, that's your treasure, that no one else can. It's no one else's, you know. So,
I have an interesting story,
mm,
um, I guess about what I shared. So when I went hiking, one of the places I hiked was on someone's property and
mm,
there were no trails. So as we were hiking, the property owner was making the trails for us with a scythe, cutting, the bushes under undergrowth. And it was such a hard hike because there was no trail. We were just, in the jungle. There was so much, up and down. Like it wasn't meant for people to walk on. Like that
no,
is,
Grace, it wasn't.
yeah. And at the time I was like, oh my God, I'm not like a frequent hiker, actually. Like, so it was like a really hard trail. And I was like, how am I gonna get through this? Is this even worth it? I went there specifically to find like a critically endangered toad. And I was like, is this toad really worth it? Like this little thing, this little animal, like and we were getting bitten by mosquitoes and there were ants everywhere. I got bitten by an ant. Like I was not having a good time, to be honest. It was so sweaty and humid and horrible. Like I want to idolize, like romanticize these things, but honestly, like it's not all that it seems to be sometimes. It sucks sometimes, but looking back, I'm still glad I did it because
Mm,
like it's a privilege to walk on land that no one else has walked on. Like no one else has hiked on that land. We were the first ones. We were literally making the trail. And I can't say I've done that before. Maybe it's a once in a lifetime experience. Um, so as horrible and as hard as it was and as sore as it was the day after, um, I'm still grateful that I did it. And we did end up finding the toads.
yeah, yeah.
So yay.
I think that's once in multiple lifetimes, multiple generations. 'Cause I mean, um, there's a saying, don't meet your heroes. Because, if you meet the people you idolize, you're like, oh, they're just human, or this is just a performance. But I think it's the opposite, the way you describe um, what you're finding and what you're meeting, because in terms of you surviving, in that wilderness, and then you have this toad, and it's been surviving here the
Yeah.
whole time, not bothered by ants. And right, they're not basic American California ants.
Yeah. They're scary ants.
Um, what do you think about the ethical implications of your work, especially going into medicine?
Yeah. I think, well, I want to be a doctor, and I feel like a lot of people join the field for wrong reasons,
Yeah.
especially at Stanford. I see that a lot. For any field, really.
Mm,
Even though people are really smart, they're not always passionate about what they want to do. A lot of it is just, I want to make a lot of money and settle down, have a family, and live an easy life.
yeah.
But if you're a doctor, you have other people's lives in your hands. So I don't think it's something that you can just pursue so nonchalantly. Um, but I see a lot of my peers doing that. Um, and obviously I'm not going to be the one to be like, oh, you shouldn't go into the field
Yeah.
for XYZ. Um, but I try to remind myself why I want to do this. And um, if that passion or medicine ever um, falls away, I will pursue other things because I think it's a gift to join the field,
Mm,
and it's not something to take for granted. Um, so when I think about ethics in medicine, that's what I think about because I want to be a good doctor. I don't want to mess around with people's lives, and um, yeah, I just think of it as a gift,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
as horrible as the studies are right now, I'm not enjoying them.
Mm,
I think it will be worth it in the end. And
yeah.
the doctors in the Asclepius Snakebite Foundation have really shown me that
Okay.
um, because they're so in love with their work and they seem very fulfilled with what they're doing. They're making some of the only snakebite clinics in West Africa, and no one else is doing that.
Mm,
It's actually an epidemic, and a lot of people don't know. It's one of the like worst tropical diseases at this moment. Um, but even if I don't focus just on like venomous snakes and wildlife conflict, like as long as I'm in love with what I'm doing, I think
mm,
things will be okay. Um, I think other professions, it's not as important whether you're passionate, but this one is
mm,
just like you're interacting with human lives
yeah.
and they're trusting you. So if I'm not gonna do a good job, I just shouldn't do it. And for me, I have to love something to do a good job. So if I don't love it,
Yeah. Yeah.
I will leave. Yeah.
Um, so perfect transition. So how do you stay motivated? What do you do to stay motivated?
Um, I'm just a simple person. I feel like my life only revolves around a few things,
Mm,
and I just stay in touch with, God and nature,
mm,
um, and the things that I love, and that's what keeps me motivated. Like
yeah. Yeah.
I really only like medicine and animals, and like that's really it. And art. Um, but even though I only like a few things, like my passion for those things is real.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep living and doing
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Yeah. It's deep. It's deep. And it's hard because there's so many distractions and there are other people that like other things. You're like, how come I don't like those things? Or how come I'm not into it, you know? Um, Going to that actually, what's a misconception um people have about you or the work that you're doing right now? Or both?
I don't know about misconceptions, but I
Mm,
mean, a lot of people just think I'm weird, which is okay. And even my mom, like yesterday, she was like, you need to stop standing out and going against the grain because then bad things will happen to you. And if you conform, you like your life will be easier essentially.
mm,
Um, but it's like, why? I don't know. I think I think very differently from her.
yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand why I like the things I like or that it's very childish.
Mm,
But honestly, I think I'm happier than them because a lot of people at Stanford don't even have hobbies. Like,
mm,
they just focus on the school and their future job,
yeah.
and that's it. But that's not the way I want to live. So
Yeah.
even if someone thinks what I'm doing is strange, I don't care. Like, this is the way that I've learned to live, and I'm grateful that I'm like this and not like that.
Yeah, I definitely love your swagger. It's like, and I see other people's like, I don't think extrinsic rewards are bad. but they just don't drive me.
Hmm.
And then when you do attain some of those things, what more do you have to attain? And it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going, and there's really no rest. Um, so then how do you handle criticism or disagreement? You shared a couple instances of how you made it this far with family. And actually, you sound like I don't, your own harshest critic. I am too. When you read books, you're like, oh, I never thought of it this way. So, how do you handle criticism from maybe peers or authority figures and disagreements?
I honestly get really riled up when I get criticized, to be honest. Um, but I think that's something I've slowly matured out of.
Mm,
Um, I guess that was more me in high school. Um, Being at Stanford has really humbled me in some ways
mm,
and made me more open to criticism, just realizing that there's not just one way of thinking, one
yeah.
way of living or experiencing things. Um, so I try to keep an open mind, but I'm a very like scientific minded person. So a lot of times if someone says something and I don't agree with it, I think about it like what does the research say? What does the primary literature say? What does the science say? And I think that way of thinking isn't always practical. Um, so I'm trying to grow out of that mindset.
Yeah.
But that's literally how I think. I don't think it's always the best way. Um, Especially with me getting more in touch with the humanities.
Mm,
I try to keep an open mind and remember that other people's feelings matter and are valid.
yeah. Yeah.
And I can't just be like, well, the science says this.
Yeah.
Especially with my parents, that never works. Um,
No.
yeah. So I've just been more open-minded
Yeah.
about that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and have been growing in that aspect, I hope.
Yeah. I think, at least my perspective of getting riled up or getting triggered, um, is I think is different in regards to, and this is to encourage you. I don't think you're getting triggered for the wrong reason. I think what it is you've began with an open mind and you've probably already thought outside the box, you know. And there's still always limits, right? But you've already been considerate, and probably the people you've encountered, you're like, I don't think you thought this through. um, but yeah, there's always levels. There's always levels, and all of our encounters with reality are different, right? Um, so there's a lot of things that excite you, um, as we've heard. What's something that excites you right now besides Guinea?
Um, I stopped doing falconry for a couple years
Mm,
after having a couple hard losses uh, with my birds.
mm,
A lot of people say don't get attached to them because, anything could happen when you let them fly in the wild, like
yeah,
they are in the wild, so they could get eaten.
yeah.
Um, and that's basically what happened.
Mm,
And I was so emotionally distraught that I just like could not do it for some time.
okay,
But I'm like slowly easing back into it.
okay,
And right now I'm a general class falconer, so I can have almost any type of raptor I want. Um, and like how awesome is that? And
that's crazy.
I feel like I should take that opportunity.
Yeah.
So one bird I've always wanted to fly is a merlin,
Mhm.
which is a small falcon, but they behave like larger falcons, which means that they they fly really high.
Yeah.
And in falconry, there's this thing called a pitch. So you want
Mm,
your falcon to fly really high so that when they do the stoop, which is
mhm.
when they like kind of free fall and drop towards their prey,
Yeah.
it's more powerful.
Uh,
Um, and I like the smaller birds because it's easier for me. I live in the city, like I can keep them indoors.
Yeah.
Um, but their biology is really
Mm,
interesting because they behave like the bigger birds. So it's like big bird in a small package. And I've never flown them before. They seem pretty difficult. But I want to trust in myself and um start exploring other species that I haven't
yeah.
trained. So I am slowly putting the pieces together and thinking about how I can trap my next bird and
Yeah.
get this season started.
I I think you can do it, but that Merlin sounds like someone I know. Small, stubborn, flies really high, and it has the heart of a bigger bird. When yeah, especially for someone such as yourself who's considered open-minded and tries to be as objective as possible, and you're always um, drawing in new experiences, you're listening. Um, how do you go about um, emptying your cup to learn something new, like taking a class not in your expertise, or even if it is in your field, um, a professor or a TA or your peers um, just presenting you with a new angle. Like, how do you allow yourself to learn something new?
How do I let myself learn
Yeah.
something? Okay. I think in fields where I don't have a lot of experience or knowledge, like just be humble and accept that you are stupid. Like there is no reason to have a big ego about it.
Mm,
I always know someone's going to be better than me or smarter than me in
yeah.
some aspects, and that's okay. There is something to be learned from it,
Yeah.
and I actually prefer that because I think that you're the average of the people you surround yourself
Hmm.
with. So I want to be surrounded by people who are better than me, smarter than me, more motivated than me, because that's what gets my ears going. I
Yeah.
want to be around intelligent, interesting people. Um, so I guess that's one good thing about the academic environment that I'm in. And I think that's the one thing I don't have trouble with, knowing when I need help and asking for it and um, just accepting that, hey, I'm not going to be good at some things and that's okay.
Yeah. I For me, it's like if it's a huge red flag. If you're the smartest person in the room, it's time to leave.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
scary. It's really scary. What's a question you wish people would ask more often?
I think throughout the years, I've sifted the like fake relationships, the
Mm,
transactional relationships from the genuine ones. And I have a good set of friends, so they already ask me this. We ask each other, we check in on each other, but I think those check-ins are really important. Just like, are you okay? Like, how are you doing right now? Um, and sometimes I don't do a good job of doing that either. But it's just so important. And when I start having those types of conversations with my friends and having that vulnerability with another person, that's when I know the relationship is something real.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know if I would want people to ask me more necessarily, but that's like
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
priority I have in my genuine friendships.
That's awesome. Um, you have a lot of dreams and goals that you're working towards. But ultimately, how do you see how do you see your life impacting society in the future?
I just want to make people excited about animals. Like, um, I really love that. I actually really love teaching, is what I realized.
Mm,
I have a horse and I lease him out to people, and my current leasee is more of a beginner. And in the beginning, I felt really against it because I didn't want someone who didn't know what they were doing, um, riding my horse and doing things with him because that is like my baby.
mm,
But I really thought about this and realized what my priorities are. And what I realized is that my Lisi is kind and she genuinely
mm,
loves the sport and the horse. And that's more important than being a good rider or an experienced rider. And I was like, you know what? Like, I will take the time to teach her, um, so she can get to the level that she needs to be because she has passion. And just a few years ago, I was where she was. And you have to make mistakes to learn and grow. So I accepted that she was gonna make mistakes, but that is okay because she has the right heart.
mm.
So this summer and this fall, I spent so many hours at the barn teaching her all the basics. Even yesterday, I gave her like an hour-long lesson teaching her how to exercise my horse.
Mm,
Um, and I get nothing out of this really. When I spend extra time there, I am taking time away from other things I could be doing.
yeah, yeah.
But it does make me happy that um she's happy to learn, which is one of the most important things. And one of my friends was even like, you should be an instructor, like a writing instructor. I don't know if I'd go that far, but
Mm.
it's fun to teach people when they really love something. Um, so I want to keep incorporating that in my life, like in some way.
So we are down to the last four questions. Um, these are the hot seat questions. So just be as honest as possible. What is depression?
Depression is when you're like a shell of yourself, and I feel like it's when don't really want to live. Like, I mean, I've been there. I feel like a lot of people have been there. Um, and it's just like a very dull feeling, not being excited about the things you'd normally be excited about. And when I'm depressed, I often just feel like, why am I here? And it's a very scary feeling to not um know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think when someone's depressed, they kind of become a ghost of themselves.
Mhm.
And it's like you're alive, but you're not really living.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
What is love?
For me, love is when I care about someone more than I care about myself, to be honest. Um, when I want the best for them, and it's treating them with, honesty, kindness, and respect. I think I have love for a lot of people, but I don't necessarily love everybody.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not saying I wouldn't treat them with respect, but um, I will. I sometimes I wish I could make a better impact on the people around me rather than being like, oh, I want to change the world. And I still struggle with which is more important, like the macro versus micro impact. Um, but I want to do everything I do with love. And I think it's like the purest feeling you can have for a thing or another person. Um, and I think only good things can come out of love.
Bars, bars. You should be a rapper. Don't tell your mom that.
No,
I suggest you become a rapper.
no one's listening to me.
Wow. But yeah, only good things can come out of it. I love that. What is the meaning of life?
This happiness. Our lives are short. I think about this a lot, and
Mm,
I've already lived like 20% of my life, and my parents are getting old. So it's sad. And people around me are aging, we are all aging all the time. I I wish I could tell some of my friends like you only have this life, so stop doing things that make you miserable and go do the thing that you really want because unless you believe in reincarnation or something, like this is it. Like so you better make it meaningful and happy because there's no other reason to live.
mm,
Yeah.
right. Last question. What advice would you give to young people, especially seniors in high school?
I know that it's not a fun place to be in life. I
Mm,
know a lot of people are really stressed and have a lot of mental health issues and are depressed, and
yeah.
it's really competitive here. So it's just not a fun time. Like it's awful in a lot of ways. Um, but things will get better, and I've seen the way out. And honestly, no matter where you go, everyone has a better time after that first semester, especially. And in college, like that is when you start meeting your people, like exploring your interests.
Mm,
Um, and whatever happens, like you will find a way. Like if you want to achieve something and you're passionate about it and you want to make it work, it'll happen no
mm,
matter the outcome. And I know people who've like gone to community college after high school and then they transfer somewhere amazing if they want to go to like an Ivy League school. Like there's
yeah.
always going to be a second chance. Um, like I even in college, I've screwed up my grades sometimes. Like I've withdrawn from classes.
Mm,
I never take classes, like, but there's always going to be a second chance.
mm,
So the college acceptances and that time of your life is not the end all be all. Things will be okay. You will figure out a way. And regardless of what happens, you're gonna find a way to make the most of your life and be happy. And the next 4 years will be really exciting. So, yeah.
all right. That is Grace Chung, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us your time, um, with your insight, your bars. Um, I'm grateful to have met this wonderful, amazing animal evangelist. She's converting me. And we look forward to having you on in the future. All right. Thank you, Grace.
Thanks, Robert.